On a stormy evening in Cedar Grove, Jack Morrison's life was about to change forever. A single dad working 2 jobs to keep his family afloat, he never expected to become a hero. But when he saw a car sinking in the floodwaters, he didn't hesitate. He dove in, risking everything to save a stranger trapped inside. Little did he know that this woman wasn't just another victim of the storm. She was someone whose identity would turn his world upside down. 3 days later, a private jet landed in his small town, bringing with it an offer that seemed impossible to believe. But who was this mysterious woman he saved, and why did her rescue set such extraordinary events in motion? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The bills scattered across Jack Morrison's kitchen table told the same story they always did. Past due notices in angry red letters, final warnings, and payment plans that seemed to stretch into infinity. In the pale light of dawn, he studied them with tired eyes, calculating and recalculating numbers that refused to add up. "Dad!" Emily's voice drew his attention from the papers. His 13-year-old daughter stood in the doorway, already dressed for school, her brother's lunch box in hand. "Tommy forgot this again." Jack managed a smile, quickly shuffling the bills into a pile and tucking them into his worn leather folder. "What would we do without you looking after us, Em?" She returned his smile, but her eyes lingered on the folder. Too observant for her own good, Emily had inherited her mother's sharp intelligence and her worry lines. At 13, she shouldered more responsibility than any kid should have to bear. "Is Mickey's garage still hiring?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "Hey now," Jack said, standing and pulling her into a quick hug. "That's my job to worry about. You just focus on being 13, okay?" The sound of cartoons drifted from the living room, where Tommy, all of 8 years old, was probably still in his pajamas. Jack checked his watch. 5:45 a.m., just enough. Time to get everyone ready before his first shift. "Tommy, time to get dressed, buddy," he called out, already moving to start breakfast. 2 eggs left in the carton, half a loaf of bread. It would have to do until payday. The morning routine was a well-choreographed dance they'd perfected over the past 3 years, since it had become just the 3 of them. Emily helped Tommy with his shoes while Jack made sandwiches. Tommy fed their ancient cat, Mr. Whiskers, while Jack ironed Emily's band uniform. Every minute counted, every task essential. By 6:30, they were piling into Jack's rusted Chevy pickup, the engine protesting as it always did in the morning chill. The truck had seen better days, they all had, but it kept running through sheer determination, much like its owner. "Dad!" Tommy piped up from the back seat. "Can we get pizza tonight?" Jack glanced in the rearview mirror, catching his son's hopeful expression. The last $20 in his wallet was meant for gas, but Tommy had aced his spelling test last week, and small victories deserved celebration. "Tell you what, champ, if I can pick up an extra shift at the security job this weekend, we'll have pizza on Friday." The promise of future pizza seemed to satisfy Tommy, but Emily's slight frown told Jack she was doing the math in her head. She'd gotten too good at calculating the cost of things, at understanding the weight of every dollar. First stop was Cedar Grove Elementary, where Tommy tumbled out with his recovered lunchbox and a quick hug. Jack watched until he disappeared through the double doors, that familiar ache in his chest, the one that came with sending his kids out into a world that wasn't always kind to children of struggling single parents. Next was Cedar Grove Middle School, where Emily lingered a moment longer than usual. "Dad," Mrs. Peterson said, "there's a summer science program at the community college. It's probably expensive, but—" "Send me the details," Jack said, meaning it. He'd figure something out. Emily's eyes lit up. She knew when he meant it versus when he was just trying to soften a no. The last stop was Harrison's auto shop, where Jack would spend the next 8 hours under the hoods of other people's cars before heading to his night security shift at the mall. The shop's owner, Pete Harrison, was waiting outside as Jack pulled up. "Morrison!" Pete called out, his expression grim. Got a minute? Jack's stomach tightened. In this economy, a boss wanting a minute before shift rarely meant good news. He climbed out of the truck, the folder of bills seeming to burn in his back pocket. "Listen," Pete began. "You're one of my best mechanics, but corporate's breathing down my neck about overtime. I'm going to have to cut everyone back to 40 hours. I fought for you, but—" Jack nodded, keeping his face neutral, even as his mind raced through calculations. The overtime had been keeping them afloat, barely. Without it, "I understand, Pete. Times are tough all over." Pete clapped him on the shoulder, relief evident that Jack wasn't going to make this difficult. "You're a good man, Morrison. If things pick up—" But they both knew things weren't picking up. Not in Cedar Grove, where the big factories had closed one by one, leaving only small businesses fighting to survive. As Jack changed into his work coveralls, he allowed himself exactly 30 seconds of despair. Then he straightened his shoulders. Just as he had every morning since Sarah's diagnosis had started their slow slide from comfortable middle class to barely scraping by. His kids needed him to be strong, to keep pushing forward, to believe that hard work and determination would eventually turn things around. The first car of the day waited in his bay, a BMW with transmission trouble. Jack pulled on his gloves, grabbed his tools, and got to work. The bills would have to wait, the worries would have to wait. Right now, there were cars to fix, children to feed, and somehow, someway, he would figure out how to keep their small world from falling apart. Jack's phone buzzed against the metal tool cart, the emergency alert tone, cutting through the usual garage noise. He slid out from under the BMW, wiping his hands on a shop rag as he checked the message. Flash flood warning. Cedar Grove and surrounding areas. Heavy rainfall expected. Seek higher ground. Avoid flood-prone areas. Through the open garage door, he could see dark clouds gathering on the horizon, heavy and ominous. Their house sat near Cedar Creek, not usually a problem, but with the ground already saturated from weeks of spring rain. "Morrison!" Pete called from the office. "School's closing early." Storms looking worse than they thought. Jack's heart rate quickened. Emily could walk home from the middle school, but Tommy— He checked the time. 1:45 p.m. His shift ended at 4-hour day. "Pete, I need to—" "Go." Pete waved him off. "Get your— Hey kids, weather service says this one's serious." The pickup's wipers could barely keep up with the rain as Jack navigated through streets already starting to puddle. Wind whipped debris across the road. Branches, trash bins, someone's lawn furniture. The radio crackled with updates. Unprecedented rainfall amounts. Emergency services advise, stay off roads if possible. Cedar Grove Middle School's parking lot was chaos when Jack arrived. Parents rushed through the rain, children huddled under jackets and backpacks. He spotted Emily immediately standing, under the awning, phone in hand. "Dad," she jumped into the truck. "I was just about to call. They're evacuating everyone near the creek." "I know, honey. We're getting Tommy, then grabbing some things from the house." The elementary school was worse. Dozens of cars lined up, horns honking, parents calling out names. Tommy's teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, was shepherding kids through the downpour. "Mr. Morrison!" she waved, pointing toward the gym. "Tommy's inside!" Jack found his son sitting with a group of children clutching his backpack. "Dad, are we having an adventure?" "Something like that, buddy." Jack managed a reassuring smile. "We need to move fast, okay?" The drive home was tense. Streets that had been merely wet 20 minutes ago now had standing water. The creek, usually visible from Bridge Street, had risen to just below its banks. Their small house looked vulnerable against the darkening sky. Jack ushered the kids inside, already mentally cataloguing what they needed. Important documents, medications, a change. Of clothes, his phone buzzed again. Another alert. "Dad?" Emily's voice held a note of fear he hadn't heard since Sarah's final days. "The water's coming up the yard." She was right. The creek had breached its banks. Water crept across their back lawn, inch by inexorable inch. "New plan," Jack announced, forcing confidence into his voice. "Emily, get the emergency kit from the hall closet. Tommy, grab Mr. Whisker's carrier. We're going to Aunt Linda's." They worked quickly, moving with the efficiency of a family used to handling crises together. Jack grabbed the leather folder of documents, Emily's science fair trophies, the photo album from the top shelf. The wind howled, rain hammering against the windows like it wanted in. As they loaded the truck, a sound cut through the storm. Someone honking desperately, repeatedly. Jack peered through the curtain of rain. On bridge. Street barely visible through the deluge, a car was stranded in rapidly rising water. "Stay here," he ordered, but Emily was already pulling out her phone, dialing 911. "All emergency services are currently experiencing high call volumes." The car's horn blared again, more frantic now. Jack could see someone moving inside, pressing against the windows as the water rose. The current was picking up, swirling around the vehicle with dangerous force. He thought of Sarah, of promises made in quiet hospital rooms. Keep them safe, keep them together. But he also thought of what she'd say if she knew someone needed help and he'd done nothing. "Emily," he said, pulling off his jacket, "call Aunt Linda, tell her we're coming, but I have to help first. Lock the doors. Don't leave the truck." "Dad, no. I'll be right back." He squeezed her hand, trying to convey certainty he didn't feel. "Take care of your brother." The rain was cold, the wind bitter. As Jack waded into the rising water, he heard Tommy's voice behind him. "Dad's gonna save them, right, Em?" The water reached his waist, then his chest. The stranded car rocked slightly in the current. Inside, a woman's face appeared at the window. Eyes wide with terror, Jack pressed forward, every step a battle against the flood. The current hit Jack like a physical blow, threatening to sweep his feet out from under him. Each step required total concentration. The water was numbingly cold, filled with debris, branches, trash, pieces of fencing ripped from nearby yards. Through the rain, he could see the car more clearly now. A black luxury sedan, its hood already submerged. The woman inside pressed her hands against the window. Even through the rain-streaked glass, Jack could see she was trying to remain calm, but her eyes betrayed her terror. The water inside the car had reached her waist. "I'm coming," he shouted, though the storm probably swallowed his words. "Try your window." She shook her head, gesturing at the controls. The electrical system was dead, 20 feet away, 15. The current grew stronger with each step. Jack's years of mechanical work had built his strength, but the flood was a relentless opponent. A piece of debris, someone's garden shed maybe, floated past, missing him by inches. From the truck, he heard Emily's voice carrying over the storm. "You can do it, Dad." 10 feet. The car shifted ominously in the current. Water was seeping. In faster now, reaching the woman's chest. She had pressed herself against the roof, trying to find the last pocket of air. Jack reached the car's driver's side, gripping the door handle for stability. The woman's face appeared in the window beside him. Up close, despite her fear, he noticed an air of elegance about her. Expensive clothes, carefully styled hair, now wet and plastered to her face. "Back up!" he shouted, miming his intention. When she nodded and moved away from the window, Jack picked up a chunk of concrete that had broken free from someone's landscaping. It took 3 tries, but the window finally shattered. Water rushed. In faster. The woman gasped as the cold hit her, but she remained focused, following Jack's lead as he reached in through the broken window. "Give me your hands!" he had to shout over the storm. "Push from inside while I pull." She was surprisingly strong, coordinated even in crisis. Together they managed to get her through the window. Jack caught her as she came through, keeping them both from being swept away by the current. "Can you swim?" he asked. "Yes, but—" Her words were cut off as the car shifted again, this time dramatically. The current had caught it fully now, threatening to pull it, and them, into deeper water. "Hold on to me," Jack ordered. "We'll go sideways to the current, back to my truck." She gripped his shoulder, and together they began the arduous journey back. The flood seemed twice as strong now, or maybe his strength was fading from the cold. Every few feet they had to pause, brace against the current, find new footing. Behind them there was a great groaning sound of metal and water. The sedan was being swept away, rolling once before disappearing into the murky torrent. The woman shuddered against him, but kept moving. Halfway back, her heel caught on something underwater. She stumbled, and for a heart-stopping moment, Jack thought they would both be swept away. But he managed to brace himself, one arm around her waist, the other gripping a partially submerged street sign. "Almost there," he encouraged. Though he couldn't feel his feet anymore, he could see Emily and Tommy's faces pressed against the truck's windows. The sight gave him renewed strength. 5 more feet. 4. 3. Finally, his hand found the truck's hood. Emily had already opened the back door, and together they helped the woman climb in. Jack pulled himself in after her, his whole body shaking with cold and adrenaline. "Dad!" Tommy launched himself from the front seat, wrapping wet arms around Jack's neck. Emily was already pulling emergency blankets from their kit, handing them to both adults. "Thank you," the woman said, her voice surprisingly steady despite everything. I don't even know your name." "Jack Morrison." He tried to smile through chattering teeth. "And you're welcome, Ms." She hesitated just for a moment. "Chen, Victoria Chen." She wrapped the blanket tighter around herself, and Jack noticed her glance at his worn truck interior, the shabby emergency kit, taking in their circumstances with keen eyes. "We need to get to higher ground," Emily said, practical as always. "Aunt Linda's waiting." Jack nodded, turning the key. The engine coughed once, then roared to life, reliable as always when it mattered most. "Miss Chen, we're heading to my sister-in-law's house. It's on the hill, away from the flood. You're welcome to come, at least until emergency services can reach you." "That's very kind," she said, pulling something from her sodden jacket pocket, a phone in a waterproof case. She typed quickly, then looked up. "But I've already arranged for assistance. If you could drop me at the hillside hotel, I'd be grateful." As Jack navigated through the flooded streets, he caught glimpses of her in the rear-view mirror. Despite her dripping hair and ruined clothes, she maintained an aura of composure, of someone used to controlling her environment. She made several brief phone calls in what sounded like Mandarin, her tone clipped and businesslike. When they reached the hotel, she turned to Jack. "Mr. Morrison, I won't forget this." She reached for her purse, but Jack shook his head. "No need, Ms. Chen. Anyone would have done the same." She smiled, a knowing look in her eyes. "No, Mr. Morrison, they wouldn't have." She stepped out into the rain, then turned back. "You'll be hearing from me." As they drove away, Tommy waved at her through the back window. "Dad, is she a princess?" Jack laughed, relief making him lightheaded. "Nobody, just someone who needed help." But Emily, ever observant, watched the hotel recede in the mirror. "Dad," she said quietly, "that was a Patek Philippe watch she was wearing. Those cost more than our house." Jack glanced at his daughter, wondering when she'd learn to recognize luxury watches. "Come on," he said. "Aunt Linda's probably worried sick." As they drove up the hill toward safety, none of them noticed the black SUV that pulled up to the hotel or the efficient-looking men in suits who hurried to meet Victoria Chen at the entrance. Aunt Linda's house was organized chaos when they arrived. She'd already taken in 3 other families from the creek area, and the living room looked like a refugee camp. The smell of her famous chicken soup filled the air. "Jack Morrison, you foolish brave man!" Linda pulled him into a fierce hug, ignoring his wet clothes. "Emily called and told me what you did. I swear you're just like Sarah. Never could walk past someone who needed help." The mention of Sarah brought the usual bittersweet ache, but today it was different. Maybe it was the adrenaline still coursing through his system, or maybe it was the strange encounter with Victoria Chen. But for the first time in years, the pain felt more like a warm memory than an open wound. "Here," Linda thrust dry clothes into his hands. "These are Mike's old things. They should fit. Tommy, honey, I've got hot chocolate in the kitchen." As Jack changed in the bathroom, he could hear the news playing in the living room. The reporter's voice carried through the door. Unprecedented flooding in Cedar Grove. Emergency services report multiple rescues, including a dramatic incident where a local mechanic saved a stranded motorist. He emerged to find Emily, glued to her phone, her eyes wide. "Dad, you're trending on local Twitter. Someone got a video of the rescue." Sure enough, there he was, grainy and distant in the rain, helping Victoria Chen through the car window. The clip had already gathered thousands of views. "My dad's a hero," Tommy announced proudly to the room at large, causing several adults to smile and nod. But Jack's attention was caught by something else. A silk scarf left behind on his truck's back seat, deep blue with an intricate pattern. He picked it up, intending to have it cleaned and returned, when he noticed the label, Hermes. Emily appeared at his elbow. "Dad, look at this." She held up her phone, showing a business news website. The headline made his stomach drop. Chen, global CEO caught in flood drama. The article showed a photo of Victoria Chen, dry, polished, powerful, standing at a podium. The woman he'd pulled from the flood had been wearing the same watch, the same subtle pearl earrings. Chen Global? Linda peered over their shoulders. The tech company? They're huge in Asia. Sarah used to talk about their innovation in medical technology. Jack sat heavily on the stairs, the silk scarf still in his hands. The CEO of a global corporation. No wonder she'd seemed so composed, so quick to arrange her own pickup. No wonder she'd looked at his truck that way. She probably spent more on coffee each month than he made in a year. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Mr. Morrison." A crisp, professional voice. "This is James Wu, Ms. Chen's executive assistant. She asked me to ensure you and your family are safe and comfortable. Do you require any assistance with accommodations or supplies?" "No, we're fine, thanks. My sister-in-law..." "Excellent. Ms. Chen also requested that I verify your contact information. She'll be in touch personally once the situation stabilizes." Before Jack could respond, the line went dead. Emily, who had been listening, raised her eyebrows. "Dad, do you know what this could mean? Chen Global is expanding into American markets. They're looking for manufacturing locations and their medical technology division." "Hey," Jack interrupted gently, "let's not get ahead of ourselves. She's just being polite about the rescue." But even as he said it, he remembered Victoria Chen's parting words. "You'll be hearing from me." There had been something in her tone, something that suggested she wasn't a woman who made idle statements. Tommy appeared with 2 mugs of hot chocolate, carefully carrying them like precious cargo. "One for you, Dad, and one for Emily." "Aunt, Linda said sugar helps with shock." Jack pulled his son close with one arm, taking the hot chocolate with his other hand. Outside, the rain continued to fall, but the emergency alerts had stopped. The worst of the storm was passing. "Dad?" Tommy asked, settling against him. "Can we check on our house tomorrow?" "Of course, buddy." First thing, but as his children drank their hot chocolate and Linda's house slowly settled into evening routines, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that the storm had changed more than just the landscape of Cedar Grove. Something else had shifted. Something he couldn't quite name yet. He carefully folded Victoria Chen's silk scarf and tucked it away in his still damp jacket. Whatever tomorrow brought, today had reminded him that sometimes the biggest changes came from the smallest choices, like stopping to help a stranger in the rain. The Cedar Grove Gazette's headline read, "Local Mechanics Heroic Rescue of Global CEO." Jack stared at his own photo beneath the text. Someone had caught him just as he was helping Victoria Chen from the floodwaters. The image was dramatic. He had to admit, rain driving sideways, floodwaters swirling, his expression intense with concentration. "They made you look like Superman," Emily said, sliding into their usual booth at Joe's diner. It was their first breakfast out in months, but Pete had insisted, saying the overtime he'd cut could at least buy them a decent meal. "More like a wet rat," Jack replied, but he couldn't help smiling at Tommy's proud grin as their regular waitress, Rita, approached. "Well, if it isn't Cedar Grove's hero." Rita set down 3 plates of pancakes. "On the house," she insisted. "Jack Morrison, I always knew you were one of the good ones, But saving the CEO of Chen Global? That's something else. I just helped someone who needed it, Jack said. But Rita was already hurrying off to tell another customer about how she'd been serving breakfast to Jack for 15 years, even before he was famous. The diner was busier than usual, and Jack noticed people stealing glances their way. His phone had been buzzing non-stop with messages from old friends, distant relatives, even his high school football coach. But the most intriguing messages were the ones he couldn't quite explain. Calls from blocked numbers that never left voicemails, emails from corporate addresses that disappeared when he tried to open them. "Dad," Emily said quietly, "there's another suit watching the diner." She was right. Through the window, Jack could see a man in an impeccable black suit standing beside a dark SUV, pretending to check his phone. He'd noticed others like him around town over the past 2 days, at the grocery store near the auto shop, driving slowly past their flood-damaged house. "Probably insurance adjusters," he said, more to reassure himself than Emily. The flood damaged a lot of properties, but insurance adjusters didn't wear earpieces or drive vehicles with diplomatic plates. Tommy was halfway through his pancakes when Jack's phone buzzed again. This time, the number wasn't blocked. "Mr. Morrison, this is Catherine Reed from the Cedar Grove Chamber of Commerce. I was wondering if you had a moment to discuss an exciting opportunity for our community." Jack frowned. The Chamber of Commerce had never shown interest in him before. "I'm having breakfast with my kids right now. Of course, family first. But I should mention that representatives from Chen Global will be attending our next meeting, and they specifically asked if you would be there." Jack's eyes met Emily's across the table. She was trying to look like she wasn't listening, but her fork had stopped halfway to her mouth. "I'll think about it," he said carefully, as he hung up. Rita returned with fresh orange juice, also on the house. "You know," she said, lowering her voice, "my cousin works for the realtor that handles commercial properties downtown. Says there's been inquiries about the old Marshall factory site. Big inquiries, if you know what I mean." The Marshall factory had been Cedar Grove's heart for generations before closing 5 years ago. Its abandoned buildings stood as a monument to the town's economic decline. "Interesting," Jack said non-committally, but his mind was racing. Chen Global was looking for American manufacturing locations, Emily had said. Through the diner's window, he watched as another black SUV drove past, slowly. "Can we go check on our house after breakfast?" Tommy asked, oblivious to the undercurrents of adult conversation. "Mr. Whiskers probably misses his window seat." The mention of home brought Jack back to reality. Their house had taken on water, though thankfully not as much as some. Insurance would cover some repairs, but not all. The bills in his leather folder hadn't disappeared just because he'd helped someone important. "Sure, buddy, we'll head there next." As they finished breakfast, more people stopped by their booth. Neighbors, old friends, even the mayor, all wanting to shake his hand, to be part of the story. Jack answered their questions politely, but kept his responses vague. Something told him that Victoria Chen's words, "You'll be hearing from me," were more than just a polite thank you. Outside, the sun had finally broken through the clouds. The floodwaters were receding, leaving behind mud and debris, but also possibility. As they walked to his truck, Jack noticed Emily watching the man in the suit, who was now speaking quietly into his earpiece. "Dad," she said, "I think our lives are about to change." Jack helped Tommy into his booster seat, thinking about the bills in his folder, about Emily's science program, about the look in Victoria Chen's eyes when she'd said she wouldn't forget. "Maybe," he said, "but we're still us." The man in the suit nodded slightly as they drove past, and Jack had the distinct feeling that somewhere, in a much more expensive vehicle, Victoria Chen was making plans that would prove Emily right. The sound of jet engines wasn't common in Cedar Grove. When the sleek Gulfstream G650 descended from the morning clouds, its approach drew dozens of onlookers to the small municipal airport's chain-link fence. Among them stood Jack, Emily, and Tommy, summoned by a precisely worded email that had arrived the previous evening. "That's $100 million airplane," Emily whispered, her phone already out and researching. "It's Chen Global's corporate jet. They only have 3 in their whole fleet." Jack adjusted his tie, borrowed from Pete, along with the suit that fit almost well enough. After a week of mysterious phone calls and men in black suits, the email hadn't been entirely surprising, but its directness had been striking. "Ms. Chen requests the pleasure of your company. Your family is welcome to attend." The jet's wheels touched down with barely a whisper, its white surface gleaming in the morning sun. It taxied with elegant precision before coming to rest near the small terminal building. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the door opened. Stairs descended, and 2 familiar figures emerged. Victoria Chen looked nothing like the dripping woman Jack had pulled from the flood. In a perfectly tailored charcoal suit and subtle pearls, she radiated authority. Behind her came James Wu, her assistant, carrying a sleek leather portfolio. "Mr. Morrison," she smiled, extending her hand, "thank you for coming. And these must be Emily and Tommy." "Hi," Tommy said shyly, while Emily managed a polite nod, her eyes wide as she took in the jet behind them. "Shall we?" Victoria gestured toward the terminal building, where Jack could see a conference room had been prepared. Through the windows, he spotted refreshments, flowers, and what looked like presentation materials. "Actually," Jack said, surprising himself with his boldness, "if we're going to talk about whatever this is, I'd prefer somewhere more familiar. There's a coffee shop down the street." "Better yet," Victoria interrupted smoothly. "Why don't you show me your town? James can follow with the children in the car." Minutes later, Jack found himself walking Cedar Grove's main street beside one of the world's most powerful CEOs. Victoria Chen moved with easy grace, her designer heels somehow managing the uneven sidewalk. "Your community has good bones," she said, pausing to study the empty Marshall factory in the distance. "Strong infrastructure, strategic location, skilled workforce. But it's hurting, like a lot of small towns," Jack agreed. When Marshall closed, they left behind more than empty buildings. They left behind people like you, Mr. Morrison, people who understand the value of hard work, of community, of doing the right thing even when it's difficult. They stopped at the corner where Bridge Street crossed Main. The flood damage was still visible, mud lines on buildings, debris caught in fences. "I've spent the past week learning everything about you, Mr. Morrison," Victoria continued. "Single, father, 2 jobs, perfect credit score despite significant medical debt from your wife's illness. You maintain a 20-year-old truck that should have died years ago. Your daughter's science fair projects win state competitions. Your son volunteers at the animal shelter every Saturday. And when you saw my car in the flood, you didn't hesitate." Jack shifted uncomfortably. "Anyone would have—" "No," she cut him off firmly. "They wouldn't have. But you did, without knowing who I was, without expecting anything in return. That's rare, Mr. Morrison. That's valuable." A black SUV pulled up beside them, James Wu at the wheel with Emily and Tommy in the back, their eyes wide as they nibbled on what looked like imported chocolates. "Chen Global is expanding its medical technology division into the United States," Victoria said. "We need a manufacturing facility, yes, but more importantly, we need people we can trust. People who understand both technology and humanity. The Marshall factory site has everything we need except one thing." She turned to face him fully. "We need you, Mr. Morrison. Your mechanical expertise, your leadership potential, your integrity. We'll renovate the factory, create 500 local jobs, but only if you agree to be our operations director." Jack's world tilted slightly. "I'm a mechanic," he managed. "You're an untapped resource. We'll provide training, education, everything you need. Full benefits, of course, including retroactive coverage for all your previous medical expenses. A salary that will ensure Emily can attend any college she chooses. A new home in a location of your choice. A future limited only by your own ambition. She reached into her jacket and produced an envelope. The formal offer. Take time to review it with your family. But know this. I choose my people carefully, Mr. Morrison. I chose Cedar Grove because of you. The SUV's window lowered, and Tommy's excited voice carried out. Dad, they have a robot that makes ice cream. Victoria smiled. Perhaps you'd all like to see the jet. I find children often ask the most insightful questions about technology. As they walked back toward the airport, Jack felt the weight of the envelope in his hand. Through the chain-link fence, he could see the crowd of onlookers had grown. Tomorrow, everyone in Cedar Grove would be talking about the jet, about Victoria Chen, about what it all meant. But right now, watching Emily pepper James Wu with questions about Chen Global's latest medical patents, while Tommy described his ice cream robot experience, Jack realized that Emily had been right that day at the diner. Their lives were about to change. The only question was, were they ready? Inside the Gulfstream's cabin, Tommy pressed his face against a window worth more than their house, while Emily examined the smart glass displays built into each seat. Jack sat across from Victoria Chen, the company portfolio open between them on a burled walnut table. Let me be clear about what we're offering, Victoria said, touching a screen that transformed the cabin's window into a presentation display. Chen Global isn't just a technology company. Our medical division has revolutionized cancer treatment. In Asia, we're developing artificial organs, pioneering gene therapies. She paused, something flickering in her eyes. Your wife's condition. Our new treatment protocols might have given her more time. Jack's throat tightened. Emily, ever attentive, moved closer to him. But we can't change the past, Victoria continued gently. We can only shape the future. The Marshall factory won't just be manufacturing medical devices. It will be our American research headquarters. 500 jobs to start, potentially doubling within 5 years. James Wu smoothly produced more documents, blueprints, environmental impact studies, economic projections. The facility will revitalize the entire region, he explained. Advanced manufacturing, research laboratories, training centers. Cedar Grove could become a hub for medical innovation. And you want me to run it? Jack asked, still struggling with the concept. I fix cars. You understand machines, yes, but more importantly, you understand people. Victoria leaned forward. When I was trapped in that car, I watched you make a dozen critical decisions in seconds. You assessed the situation, calculated risks, adapted to changing conditions. That's not just mechanical knowledge, that's leadership. She touched another screen, and a new image appeared. A modern house with a wraparound porch, surprisingly similar to the one Jack and Sarah had once dreamed about. This would be yours if you want it. Close to the facility, but with enough. Land for Tommy's dog, yes, we know about his Christmas wish. The guest house could be perfect for your sister-in-law Linda, giving you backup childcare. The garage would certainly fit your truck, though we'd provide a company vehicle as well. Emily's sharp intake of breath told Jack she'd spotted the price range of these offerings, but it was Tommy who asked the critical question. Dad, does this mean you wouldn't fix cars anymore? Before Jack could answer, Victoria interjected. Actually, Tommy, the facility will have a restoration shop for testing new diagnostic equipment. Your father's expertise with vehicles would be invaluable there. She turned back to Jack. We don't want to change who you are, Mr. Morrison. We want to give you the resources to become more of who you already are. James produced one final document, the actual offer letter. Jack's eyes widened at the salary figure. It was more than he'd make in 10 years at his current jobs. There's something else, Victoria said softly, something not in the official documents. She dismissed James and the children with a gentle gesture, sending them to explore the jet's forward cabin. Once they were alone, she continued. The night of the flood. I was visiting Cedar Grove for a very specific reason. Marshall's old records suggested they once developed a unique metallurgical process, one that could revolutionize our artificial organ program. I was following that lead when the storm hit. She smiled wryly. Sometimes fate has interesting ways of bringing the right people together. You saved more than just my life that night, Mr. Morrison. You saved years of research, millions in development, costs. But more importantly, you showed me exactly what Cedar Grove needs, what my company needs. And what's that? Heart, ethics, the understanding that every decision we make affects real people's lives. She held his gaze. I have plenty of executives who understand profit margins. I need someone who understands value, real human value. Through the cabin door, Jack could hear Tommy laughing at something James had shown him, while Emily's voice asked rapid-fire questions about medical technology. He thought about their flood-damaged house, about Emily's college dreams, about Tommy's Christmas wish list. But mostly, he thought about Sarah, about her belief that everything happened for a reason, about her final words to him. Promise me you'll be open to joy when it comes. Victoria Chen watched him process it all, her expression patient but keen. Take the weekend to think it over, she said. Talk to your family, but know this, whether you accept or not, Chen Global is coming to Cedar Grove. We'd just much prefer to do it with you. The contract folder sat unopened on Linda's kitchen table, its Chen Global logo gleaming in the afternoon light. Jack had been staring at it for hours, his coffee long gone cold. Linda bustled around him, stress-baking as she always did during family crises. The smell of her cinnamon rolls filled the house. You're overthinking this, she said, sliding a fresh roll in front of him. It's a miracle, Jack, the kind Sarah always believed in. It's not that simple, he replied, though part of him wondered why not. Everything would change. Everything already has. Linda sat across from him, her expression serious. Those men in suits aren't leaving town. That factory's getting rebuilt, whether you're involved or not. The only question is, do you want to help shape what's coming or watch from the sidelines? Through the window, he could see Emily and Tommy in the backyard. Emily was helping her brother with his science homework, using twigs and leaves to explain photosynthesis. They'd been staying at Linda's all weekend while Jack processed, as Victoria Chen had put it. His phone buzzed. Another message from Pete at the garage. Whatever you decide, we're behind you 100%. But don't you dare turn this down on our account. The whole town seemed to be holding its breath, waiting for his decision. The Cedar Grove Gazette had run another story. Local hero holds town's future in his hands. The pressure was immense, but that wasn't what was keeping him awake. At night, I keep thinking about Sarah, he admitted quietly, about her treatments, the experimental drugs we couldn't afford. Chen Global is developing cures for the same cancer that took her. If they'd been here 3 years ago. Linda reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Sarah would want you to look forward, not back. She'd want you to grab this chance for the kids. As if on cue, Tommy burst through the back door, waving a leaf. Dad? Emily showed me how plants eat sunlight. Can we get a greenhouse? I want to do experiments. Emily followed more slowly, watching her father with that too mature gaze. Have you decided yet? Jack pulled Tommy onto his lap, breathing in the scent of outdoors and childhood. Not yet, buddy. It's a big decision. Because we'd have to move? Tommy asked. But we could take Mr. Whiskers, right? We could take Mr. Whiskers, Jack confirmed. And the new house has a bigger yard. Actually, Emily said, her voice carefully neutral, I did some research. The house they're offering? It's only 10 minutes from my current school. I could stay in the same district, keep my friends, my science club. Jack looked at his daughter sharply. She'd clearly been worried about that, but hadn't said anything, waiting to see what he would decide. Always trying to make things easier for him, just like her mother. I found something else too, Emily continued, pulling out her tablet. Chen, Global's summer internship program. They take high school students interested in medical research, the kind of research that... She paused, glancing at Tommy. That might have helped Mom. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken emotions. Linda busied herself with the dishes, wiping away tears she thought no one could see. Jack opened the contract folder, finally reading through the details. The salary was life-changing, but it was the other provisions that caught his eye: comprehensive family health coverage, education funds for both children, job training programs, relocation assistance. Victoria Chen had thought of everything. There was something else too, handwritten on a post-it note in elegant script. The Marshall factory's metallurgical secrets could save thousands of lives. Help me find them. VC. Tommy squirmed in his lap, reaching for a cinnamon roll. Dad, if you get a new job, will you be happy? Because when you come home from the garage sometimes, you look really tired. Out of the mouths of babes. Jack looked at his son, then at Emily, then at Linda. They were all watching him, supporting him, but also waiting for him to give them permission to hope for something better. He thought about Sarah again, but this time not about her illness. He thought about her laugh, her determination, her absolute conviction that life had a way of opening doors just when you needed them most. "You know what?" he said, pulling out his phone. "I think it's time to call Ms. Chen." Emily's face broke into a wide smile, while Tommy cheered, not fully understanding, but happy because everyone else was. Linda went to get fresh coffee, muttering about miracles and answered prayers. But as Jack dialed the number he'd been given, he realized this wasn't just about saying yes to a job. It was about saying yes to possibility, to change, to the future, to all the things Sarah had always believed in. The keys to the new house felt impossibly heavy in Jack's hand. Brass, not steel like their old house. These were the kind of keys that opened solid wood doors with precision-crafted locks. He stood in the driveway, Emily and Tommy beside him, all three staring up at what would be their new home. "It looks like a movie house," Tommy whispered, clutching Mr. Whisker's carrier. The cat meowed in agreement. The house did look almost unreal. White columns, wraparound porch, mature maple, trees shading the lawn, but it was the garage that caught Jack's eye. A 3-bay workshop with gleaming tools and equipment he'd only dreamed of using. "Ms. Chen said it's yours." James Wu appeared beside them, his usual tablet replaced by a stack of papers. "She thought you might want a proper space to keep your mechanical skills sharp." Emily was already halfway up the front steps, but she turned back. "Dad, are we allowed to go in?" "It's our house, honey." The words felt strange in his mouth. "We can go in." The interior was a perfect blend of luxury and comfort. Hardwood, in floors, but with areas already marked for Tommy's play space. A state-of-the-art kitchen that somehow reminded Jack of Sarah's dream kitchen. And upstairs, "My room has a science corner," Emily's voice echoed down the stairs. "Dad, there's a telescope." Tommy found his room next, complete with space-themed wallpaper and a reading nook shaped like a rocket ship. "Look, Mr. Whiskers has his own window seat." Jack followed James through the house as he explained the features. Smart home systems, security measures, energy-efficient everything. But it was the small details that kept catching his eye. Photos of his family already framed on the walls. Emily's science fair ribbons mounted in her room. Tommy's artwork from kindergarten carefully preserved in the kitchen. "Ms. Chen had her team study your old house," James explained, noticing Jack's surprise. "She wanted to preserve what mattered, while upgrading what needed changing." In the master bedroom, Jack found Sarah's old jewelry box on the dresser, the one that had been water-damaged in the flood. It had been perfectly restored, its cherry wood gleaming. "How did you—" "Ms. Chen believes in respecting history while building the future," James said simply. "The movers will bring the rest of your things tomorrow, but she thought you might want to spend the first night here, get a feel for the place. The kitchen's fully stocked." He handed Jack a final envelope. "Your new security credentials for the factory. Orientation starts Monday, but take the weekend to settle in. The restoration team is already doing preliminary work on your truck." In the garage. After James left, Jack found his children in the kitchen. Emily was examining the fancy coffee maker, while Tommy pressed his nose against the French doors leading to the backyard. "Dad, there's a tree house. Can we go look?" "After dinner," Jack promised. How about we break in that kitchen first? As they cooked together, something they hadn't done since the flood, Jack watched his children slowly relax into the space. Tommy stopped checking if he was allowed to touch things. Emily quit taking pictures to show Linda and started actually using the kitchen tools. By the time they sat down to eat, it felt almost normal. Almost. I miss our old house a little, Tommy admitted over pasta, but I like that Mr. Whiskers is happy here. The cat had indeed claimed his window seat, looking quite pleased with his upgraded surroundings. Change is hard, Jack said, remembering Sarah's words from long ago. But that doesn't mean it's bad. Emily twirled pasta on her fork, thoughtful. Mom would have loved this kitchen. Yeah, Jack smiled. She would have. Later, after Tommy was asleep in his new room and Emily was testing out her telescope, Jack stood on the back porch. The treehouse silhouetted against the stars, the warm lights from inside spilling onto the lawn, the distant shape of the Marshall factory where work crews were already preparing for Monday. His phone buzzed with a text from Victoria Chen. The house satisfactory? He looked through the French doors at his children, at their faces bright with possibility, at the way they were already making this space their own. It's perfect, he typed back. Thank you, came the reply. See you Monday, Operations Director Morrison. Jack slipped the phone back into his pocket, feeling the weight of the new house keys. They didn't feel quite so heavy anymore. Jack stared at the training manual on his desk, its contents a mix of familiar mechanical principles and entirely new concepts. Advanced Biomechanical Integration Protocols, read one header. Synthetic Organ Manufacturing Standards, read another. His new office overlooked the factory floor, where crews were already installing equipment that looked more suited to a sci-fi movie than a manufacturing plant. Overwhelming, isn't it? Victoria Chen stood in his doorway, looking perfectly at ease in the controlled chaos of the developing facility. But notice how the basic principles align with automotive systems. A heart pump isn't so different from a fuel pump when you think about it. She was right. As Jack flipped through the manual, he began seeing the connections. Fluid dynamics, pressure systems, mechanical precision. The terminology was different, but the underlying logic was familiar. The first shipment of training units arrives this afternoon, she continued. I thought you might like to get your hands dirty, so to speak. Sometimes the best way to understand new technology is to take it apart. Jack smiled for the first time that morning. Now that, I understand. His phone buzzed. A text from Emily. First day of final trimester. Chemistry teacher freaked when I mentioned where you work now. Can I interview you for my science project? Then another from Tommy. Dad, Jimmy says his mom works for you now. Is that true? The messages grounded. Him? His new life might be filled with cutting-edge technology and corporate responsibilities, but at its heart, he was still just a father trying to make his children proud. Victoria noticed his expression. Family, checking in. Yeah, it's all a bit surreal for them too. Speaking of family, she sat in one of his visitor chairs, her manner shifting from CEO to something more personal. There's something we should discuss. The metallurgical process I mentioned, the one Marshall developed, I believe your wife might have known something about it. Jack's head snapped up. Sarah? She was a high school biology teacher who spent her free time researching experimental cancer treatments. Our team found her name in some of Marshall's old records. She had been corresponding with their research department about potential medical applications. Before Jack could process this, James Wu appeared with a cart laden with mechanical components. The training units, sir. Where would you like them? The restoration shop, Jack said automatically, then corrected himself. I mean, Lab 3. The converted garage space felt more familiar than his office. An hour later, surrounded by parts and tools, Jack felt his tension easing. Victoria had been right. Once he started working with the actual equipment, things clicked. The training manual's abstract concepts became concrete under his hands. Mr. Morrison? A tentative voice interrupted his focus. A young woman stood in the doorway, clearly nervous. I'm Amy Chen, no relation to Ms. Chen. I used to work at the Quick Lube on Mason Street. Jack remembered her. You did great work there. Her face lit up. Thanks. I'm in the technical training program now. They said you'd be supervising our practical exercises. By lunch, Jack had a small group of former auto mechanics gathered around the training units, their collective experience approaching the new technology with practical insight. He found himself translating between their hands-on knowledge and the manual's technical language. See, the synthetic vascular system uses pressure differentials just like a transmission, he explained. The principles are the same, we're just applying them differently. His phone buzzed again, Linda this time. Emily called, excited about some science project. Tommy's teacher called, worried he's telling tall tales about robots. Just another normal day in the new normal. P.S. Dinner at your place tonight? That kitchen needs breaking in. Jack texted back a quick yes before returning to his impromptu class. As he walked them through the calibration sequence, he noticed Victoria observing from the doorway, a satisfied smile on her face. Later, in his office, she dropped off another file. Your wife's correspondence with Marshall. I thought you might want to read it yourself. She was brilliant, Jack. She saw connections others missed. That evening, after his family had gone home and the facility had quieted, Jack opened the file. Sarah's familiar handwriting filled the margins of technical documents, her notes revealing a side of her he'd never known existed. Potential applications in targeted drug delivery, she'd written, could revolutionize cancer treatment if manufacturing process can be scaled. Jack leaned back in his chair, the pieces clicking into place like a well-maintained engine. Sarah hadn't just been fighting her own battle with cancer. She'd been looking for ways to help others fight theirs. He pulled out his phone and texted Victoria about that metallurgical process. I think I'm starting to understand why you chose me. Her reply came quickly. Sarah chose you first. I just followed her lead. The anonymous letter arrived on a Tuesday, slipped under Jack's office door sometime during the night shift. The paper was expensive, the type used in Chen Global's executive offices, but the message was printed in plain block letters. Not everyone is happy about an outsider running things. Watch your back. The Marshall secrets are worth more than you know. Jack studied the letter during his morning coffee, remembering Victoria's words about the metallurgical process. In the month since he'd started, the facility had made remarkable progress. The training programs were succeeding, local hiring was ahead of schedule, and the first production lines were nearly ready. But there had been incidents, small things. At first, missing files, equipment calibrations, mysteriously altered security badges that suddenly wouldn't work. Jack had attributed it to normal startup issues, but now... Dad? Emily stood in his doorway, her face troubled. Can we talk? He quickly tucked the letter away. Of course, honey. Everything okay at school? It's not that. She came in, closing the door. Some kids are saying things about how we only got the new house because you're not qualified for this job. That Ms. Chen only hired you because of the rescue. Jack felt a familiar ache, the kind that came whenever his children faced the harsh realities of adult worlds. What do you think? I think they're jealous, Emily said firmly. And I know you're good at this, but... She hesitated. I saw something weird yesterday during my internship tour. 2 men in suits, not the regular security guys, copying files in the records room. When they saw me, they acted really strange. Jack's unease deepened. Emily's internship was supposed to start next week. She'd just been getting a preliminary tour. What were the chances she'd stumble onto something suspicious? His phone buzzed. A text from Amy Chen. Mr. M. Calibrations wrong again in lab. 3, but I swear we did them right yesterday. Something's not adding up. Before he could respond, Victoria appeared in his doorway. Her usual composed expression showed hints of strain. Jack, we need to talk. The board of directors is flying in tomorrow. There are concerns about the pace of our progress. Emily took the hint and left. but not before giving her father a worried look. Once she was gone, Victoria closed the door. "Someone's been feeding the board misleading information," she said without preamble, "suggesting that your lack of corporate experience is slowing down the project, that the Marshall process remains undiscovered because we hired a mechanic instead of a proper executive." "The letter was right," Jack said, pulling it out. "Not everyone wants me here." Victoria read it quickly, her frown deepening. "This is high-quality paper stock, limited to executive offices. Our mystery opponent has friends in high places." She paused. "There's something else. Sarah's old correspondence with Marshall? Some of it's missing." Jack thought of the men Emily had seen in the records room. Could someone be trying to find the metallurgical process before we do? If they succeed, they could patent it themselves. The medical applications alone would be worth billions. Victoria's expression hardened. But that's not the worst part. The process, if implemented incorrectly, could be dangerous. Sarah understood this. It's why she was so careful in her research. Jack's mind raced. The calibration issues, the security badges, the missing files. Someone was methodically undermining their work while searching for Marshall's secrets. His phone buzzed again. Tommy this time. "Dad, why is a big black car sitting outside my school?" Jack showed Victoria the message. Her face went pale. "I didn't authorize any surveillance of your family." She pulled out her own phone. "I'm increasing security immediately. Jack, whoever's behind this, isn't just trying to discredit you professionally anymore." "They're sending a message," Jack finished. "Back off or else." He thought of his children, of Sarah's research, of the lives that could be saved or lost depending on who found Marshall's process first. The anonymous letter suddenly felt heavy in his hand. Victoria watched him carefully. "The board arrives tomorrow. I can't protect your position if they vote against us. We need to find proof of what's really going on, and we need to find it fast." Jack stood, his decision made. "Then let's stop reacting and start investigating. After all," he managed a grim smile, "I'm pretty good at fixing things that are broken." Jack's security badge shouldn't have worked at midnight. As operations director, his access was officially limited to business hours, a security protocol he'd helped design himself. But tonight, the red light turned green, and the door to the records room clicked open. "Someone's altered your permissions," James Wu whispered beside him. "Recently." After the anonymous letter, Victoria's trusted assistant had become Jack's unlikely ally in their after-hours investigation. The records room was dark, except for the dim glow of emergency lights and the blinking of servers. Jack moved carefully between the rows of filing cabinets, remembering Emily's story about the mysterious men. Here, James indicated a cabinet marked Historical Archives, Restricted. According to the access logs, this section's been accessed 12 times in the past week. All after hours, all with executive-level clearance. Jack pulled out his phone, checking the group text he'd set up. "Linda, kids safe at my house. No more suspicious cars." Victoria, "Board members all checked into hotel. Meeting starts 9 a.m. Amy, Lab 3 secured. Left the calibration mistakes in place as discussed. They'd set their trap. Now they just had to wait. The sound of a door opening somewhere in the facility made them both freeze. James quickly accessed a security terminal. 3 people just badged in through the east entrance. They're heading this way. Jack's mind raced. The executive offices were on the west side. Anyone coming from the east entrance was trying to avoid being seen. "Hide," he mouthed to James, moving behind a tall cabinet. James slipped into the shadows near the servers. Footsteps approached, expensive shoes on polished floors. Then voices. "The board meets in 9 hours. If we don't find those documents, they're here somewhere. The old man's notes have to be, with Marshall's original research and the Morrison problem. Once we have the process, Chen will have no choice but to remove him. No one will believe a mechanic discovered what our entire research team couldn't." Jack recognized the voices. Bradley Kent, Chen Global's head of research, and Philip Nash, a board member. The third set of footsteps belonged to someone he couldn't identify. His phone vibrated silently. A text from Victoria. Security cameras showing unauthorized access. Police standing by. Do we move? Jack waited, hardly breathing, as the men searched through files. Here! Kent's voice was triumphant. Marshall's original notes. And look, Sarah Morrison's correspondence. The fool didn't even realize his wife had solved half the puzzle already. Jack's fists clenched. They'd been playing him from the start, using Sarah's research, watching his family, waiting to steal the breakthrough from under him. His phone buzzed again. Amy. Lab 3 motion sensors triggered. Someone's accessing the test units. Of course, they weren't just after the documents. They needed the practical proof that the process worked. Get these to the lab, Nash ordered. Once we prove the concept. Works, we'll handle the rest of the cleanup. Cleanup. The word hung in the air like a threat. Jack had heard enough. He stepped out from behind the cabinet, hitting the lights. Looking for something, gentlemen? Kent and Nash spun around. The third man, Jack now recognized him as a senior researcher, reached into his jacket. I wouldn't, James's voice came from behind them. He'd positioned himself between them and the exit. Morrison? Nash recovered first, his corporate smile sliding into place. This isn't what it looks like. Really? Because it looks like corporate. Espionage, data theft, and... Jack glanced at the researcher's hand, still inside his jacket. What I'm guessing would be some pretty serious weapons charges. You're out of your depth, Kent sneered. This is beyond a simple mechanics understanding. The Marshall process could revolutionize medical technology. It needs to be in the right hands. You mean hands willing to rush it to market without proper safety protocols? Jack took out his phone, setting it to speaker. Victoria, did you get all that? Every word. Her voice came through clearly, along with the security footage and the evidence from Lab 3. The police are on their way up. Nash's corporate smile vanished. You have no idea what you're dealing with. The kind of power you're threatening. Actually, I do. Jack thought of Sarah's careful notes, of the lives that could be saved or lost, depending on how this technology was developed. I'm a mechanic. I know exactly what happens when people try to rush a process. That needs care and precision. The sound of multiple footsteps in the hallway made the researcher finally pull his hand from his jacket. Empty. Kent seemed to deflate, while Nash's face twisted with rage. This isn't over, Nash spat as police officers filled the room. Jack watched them being led away in handcuffs, their corporate authority stripped away to reveal the thieves beneath. His phone buzzed one last time. Emily. Dad, are you okay? He looked at the files they'd tried to steal, at Sarah's familiar handwriting mixed with Marshall's technical diagrams. I'm fine, honey, he texted back. Everything's going to be fine. Dawn was breaking as he finally left the facility, the first hints of sunrise glinting off the chrome and glass of the building that had become so much more than just a factory. It had become a legacy. Sarah's legacy, and now his too. The board meeting was in 3 hours. But somehow, Jack wasn't worried anymore. After all, he knew how to fix things that were broken. Even corporate conspiracies, it turned out, were just another kind of broken machine. In Victoria Chen's office, as morning light streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, Jack stared at an old photograph he'd never seen before. It showed Sarah, younger and healthy, standing in what looked like a research lab. Beside her was a much younger Victoria Chen. This was taken 15 years ago, Victoria said softly, when Sarah was consulting for Marshall's medical research division. She was brilliant, Jack. She saw applications for their metallurgical process that even Marshall's top scientists hadn't considered. Jack traced Sarah's smile in the photograph. Why didn't she ever tell me? The work was classified, and then Marshall started rushing things, cutting corners. Sarah refused to compromise on safety protocols. She resigned and went back to teaching. Victoria paused, but she never stopped researching. She kept working on the problem, refining the process, especially after her diagnosis. The boardroom down the hall was filling with executives, but this moment felt more important than any corporate meeting. "That's why you were really in Cedar Grove that night," Jack said, the pieces finally fitting together. "You were looking for Sarah's research." Victoria nodded. "When I became CEO, I started tracking down Marshall's old projects. Sarah's name kept appearing in the archives. Her approach to the metallurgical process was revolutionary, combining practical mechanical understanding with medical applications. Just like someone else I know." Jack thought about the training manual, how easily he'd understood the connections between automotive systems and medical devices. "She taught me more than I realized." Kent and Nash thought the process was just about manufacturing efficiency. Victoria continued. They never understood what Sarah saw, that the real breakthrough was in precision control, in understanding how mechanical principles could improve medical delivery systems. A knock at the door interrupted them. James Wu entered with a tablet. The police finished their preliminary investigation. Kent and Nash were working with a private equity firm. They were planning to steal the process and start a competing company. Using Sarah's research, Jack felt a fresh wave of anger. They would have rushed it to market without proper testing, just like Marshall tried to do 15 years ago. Victoria took the tablet from James, reviewing the information. The board's waiting, ready to face them. Jack looked again at the photograph of Sarah. She'd faced down corporate pressure, chosen integrity over profit. He could do no less. The boardroom fell silent as they entered. Jack carried Sarah's original research notes, carefully preserved in their folder. The same executives who had questioned his qualifications now watched him with new interest. "Ladies and gentlemen," Victoria addressed the board, "last night's events have revealed a conspiracy that threatened not just this project, but potentially thousands of lives. Mr. Morrison has not only protected our company's interests, but demonstrated exactly why he was the perfect choice to lead this facility." She nodded to Jack, who opened the folder and began explaining Sarah's discoveries. He used the practical language he'd developed for training his mechanics, making complex principles clear through real-world analogies. The board members leaned forward, understanding blooming on their faces. "So you see," he concluded, "the process isn't just about manufacturing efficiency. It's about precision, control, and safety. Sarah understood that 15 years ago. Everything I've implemented here builds on her foundation." An older board member spoke up. "I knew Sarah back in her Marshall days. Brilliant woman. She would be proud to see her work continuing like this." The vote that followed was unanimous. The facility would proceed under Jack's leadership with increased funding for safety protocols and testing procedures. Afterward, in his office, Jack found Emily waiting. She held up her tablet, showing a news article. "Chen Global unveils revolutionary medical manufacturing process. Local director credited with breakthrough." "Dad," she said carefully, "the picture in this article, is that Mom?" He showed her the photograph from Victoria's office. "She was doing important work, Emily. Work we're going to finish the right way." Emily studied the image of her mother, so young and full of purpose. "That's why Ms. Chen chose you, isn't it? She knew Mom had taught you how to think about machines differently." "Your mom taught me a lot of things," Jack smiled, "including how to recognize when life is offering you a second chance." His phone buzzed. Tommy sending a picture of Mr. Whiskers watching the morning news. The caption read, "Our cat says you're famous now." Jack laughed, feeling lighter than he had in years. The truth hadn't just set them free, it had given them a new purpose, a way to honor Sarah's legacy while building their own. 3 months after the board meeting, Jack stood in Lab 3, watching the first official test of the Marshall-Morrison process. The name had been Victoria's idea, a tribute to both the original research and Sarah's crucial developments. The manufacturing line hummed with precision, each component moving with the fluid grace of well-maintained machinery. Calibrations are perfect, Amy reported, checking the diagnostics. She'd been promoted to lead technical supervisor after her role in exposing Kent and Nash's conspiracy. Blood oxygen transfer rates exactly as predicted. The artificial heart valve they were manufacturing looked deceptively simple, a marvel of metallurgical engineering that would revolutionize cardiac care. But Jack saw beyond the machinery to the lives it would save, the families it would keep whole. "Your wife would have loved this," Pete Harrison said beside him. The auto shop owner had joined Chen Global's advisory board, helping bridge the gap between traditional mechanical expertise and cutting-edge medical technology. She always said mechanics could change the world. Jack nodded, remembering Sarah's passion for making complex things understandable. Her influence was everywhere in the facility, from the training programs that used practical experience to teach advanced concepts, to the safety protocols that prioritized precision over speed. His phone buzzed with a series of messages. "Emily, science fair judges are here. Presenting my research on biomechanical engineering in 10 minutes. Tommy, Dad, the robotics club you helped start is awesome. We built a mini heart valve. Linda, don't forget dinner tonight. Victoria's bringing that chef you like from Shanghai. The last few months had brought changes no one could have predicted. The facility had become a model for Chen Global's international operations, with delegations visiting weekly to study their training methods. Cedar Grove was transforming too. New businesses opening, housing developments breaking ground, young families moving in for the high-tech jobs. "Mr. Morrison?" James Wu appeared at his elbow. "The partnership agreement is ready for your review." The document formalized what they'd all known was coming. Jack would oversee the global implementation of the Marshall-Morrison process, traveling to Chen Global facilities worldwide to establish training programs and safety protocols. But Cedar Grove would remain his home base, the place where it had all started. "Also," James added with a slight smile, "Ms. Chen asked me to remind you about tomorrow's ceremony." "Ah, yes, the ceremony." The facility's official dedication would include the unveiling of something Jack hadn't quite gotten used to yet. A wall in the main lobby featuring 2 portraits, Marshall's original team and Sarah in her teaching lab, inspiring the next generation of innovators. "Dad!" Tommy's voice echoed across the lab. He wore his junior engineer badge proudly as he ran up, followed by his robotics club mentor. "We did it! The mini-valve works just like the big one." Jack lifted his son, marveling at how naturally Tommy moved through this high-tech environment. "That's amazing, buddy. Ready to show your sister at dinner?" "Yeah. Emily said she'd help me understand the math better. She's really smart about that stuff, just like Mom was." Victoria found them later in Jack's office, where he was helping Tommy with his robotics calculations while reviewing the partnership agreement. "Multitasking suits you," she observed. "How does it feel, seeing it all come together?" Jack watched Tommy sketching gear ratios, so much like Sarah when she was working out a problem. Through his office window he could see the factory floor, where dozens of lives were already being changed, not just by the medical devices they were producing, but by the opportunities they were creating. "It feels right," he said simply, like everything led to this somehow. "Sarah knew it would," Victoria smiled. "She told me once that the best mechanics don't just fix things, they make them better than they were before. She was talking about you even then." Tommy looked up from his calculations. "Dad, can we stop by Mum's wall before dinner? I want to show her my robotics project." "Of course, buddy." Jack gathered his things, including the partnership agreement he'd already decided to sign. "Victoria, you're still joining us at the house?" "Wouldn't miss it. Linda promised to teach me her cinnamon roll recipe." As they walked through the facility, Jack noticed how many people greeted Tommy by name, how naturally his son fit into this world of innovation and discovery. Sarah would have loved that too, seeing their children grow into the future she'd helped create. At her portrait, Tommy proudly held up his project. "Look, Mom, I'm learning about machines too." Jack put his arm around his son. remembering a rain-soaked night when everything had changed. Sometimes the biggest mechanical problems, like grief or lost dreams or broken hearts, needed more than just tools to fix. Sometimes they needed time and love and the courage to embrace unexpected possibilities. "Come on," he said to Tommy. "Let's go home. Emily's waiting to hear about your project." As they left, Jack glanced back at Sarah's smiling image. She'd known all along that life's most important repairs happened in the heart. He was just grateful he'd finally learned how to be the kind of mechanic she'd always believed he could be. The new family portrait hung in their living room, capturing a moment 6 months after the flood that had changed everything. Jack stood in the center, more confident than in previous photos, his smile reaching his eyes. Emily perched on the porch railing, her science fair medals visible, a textbook on biomedical engineering in her lap. Tommy sat on the steps with Mr. Whiskers, wearing his junior engineer badge and that infectious grin. Linda stood to the side, and next to her, in a surprise that still made Jack smile, Victoria Chen, who had somehow shifted from CEO to family. And Brend without anyone quite noticing when it happened. "It's a good picture," Emily said, studying it as she packed her bag for school. "We look happy." "We are happy," Jack replied, adjusting his tie, something that had become routine rather than a special occasion necessity. Different but happy. The changes were everywhere, in ways both big and small. Emily had transformed from a girl trying to protect her father to a young scientist coming into her own. Her latest project, a study of mechanical principles in artificial organ design, had earned her not just a science fair victory, but early acceptance letters from top engineering programs. "Dad?" She hesitated by the door. "I got another email from MIT. They want to know if I'd be interested in their summer program for promising biomedical engineers. 6 months ago, such an opportunity would have been an impossible dream." Now Jack just smiled. "Better check your calendar. Make sure it doesn't conflict with your internship presentations at Chen Global." Tommy bounded down the stairs, his backpack covered in robot stickers. "Dad, don't forget, Career Day is next week, and you promised to bring the mini heart valve display." The same boy who once shyly hid behind his sister now led tours of the robotics club he'd helped create, explaining complex mechanical concepts to visitors with infectious enthusiasm. His teachers had noticed the change too. He was suddenly excelling in science and math, his natural curiosity finding an outlet in the world of engineering. "Already in the car, buddy, along with the safety gear for the whole class." Even Linda had been transformed by their new circumstances. She'd taken over community relations for the facility, her natural warmth making her perfect for helping Cedar Grove navigate its evolution from struggling small town to emerging tech hub. She'd also started dating again, specifically a certain Chen Global executive who'd been impressed by her famous cinnamon rolls. The morning routine had changed too. Instead of rushing between jobs, Jack could have breakfast with his kids. Instead of worrying about bills, they talked about projects, ideas, dreams. Mr. Whiskers still had his window seat, but now it overlooked a garden where Tommy conducted soil experiments for his science club. "Ready for the big presentation?" Emily asked as they headed out. Jack nodded. Today he would present the Marshall Morrison process to an international medical conference, streaming live from Cedar Grove. Sarah's research, combined with their practical innovations, was about to change lives around the world. "Nervous?" Tommy asked, buckling his seatbelt. "A little," Jack admitted. "But your mom always said a little nervous energy keeps you sharp." They picked up Linda on the way to school. She'd stayed late at the facility helping prepare for the conference. "Victoria called," she reported. "The first surgeon feedback is in. They're calling it a breakthrough in cardiac care delivery." At Tommy's school, his teacher waved from the doorway. "Mr. Morrison, Tommy's been telling us about the new pediatric valve designs. We'd love to have you demonstrate at next month's STEM fair." Emily's school was next. She gathered her things, then surprised Jack with a quick hug. "Mom would be really proud of us," she whispered, "all of us." As Jack finally pulled into his parking space at the facility, he saw his team gathered in Lab 3, preparing for the presentation. Amy was running final checks on the demonstration unit. Pete was explaining the mechanical principles to visiting doctors in the practical, clear way that had become their trademark. The portrait wall caught his eye as he entered, Sarah's smile still inspiring new generations of innovators. But now, her legacy wasn't just about what had been lost. It was about what had been found, built, and transformed. His phone buzzed one last time before the presentation. Emily, "Knocked my biology test out of the park." Tommy, "My robot has the steadiest hands in class." Linda, "They're ready when you are, boss." Victoria, "The world is waiting. Show them what Cedar Grove can do." Jack straightened his tie. Sarah's research notes tucked safely in his pocket where they always were. Some transformations happened in labs, some in boardrooms, but the most important ones happened in the heart. And thanks to one rainy night and a flood of changes nobody could have predicted, their hearts were fuller than ever. The travel tickets lay spread across Jack's kitchen island: Tokyo, Singapore, London, Stockholm. Each represented a Chen global facility waiting to implement the Marshall-Morrison process, each a new horizon to explore. But these weren't just business trips anymore. They were family adventures. "I can't believe we're really going to Japan," Tommy said, carefully placing origami cranes he'd made around the tickets. He'd been practicing since learning that the Tokyo facility wanted to adapt their robotics program for local schools. "Can we see the robot museum?" "It's on the list," Jack assured him, watching Emily cross-reference flight times with her summer research schedule. She'd been invited to present her findings at medical technology conferences in 3 countries. The Singapore Symposium lines up perfectly with Tommy's robotics competition, she noted. And look, the London Medical Engineering program offered to let me audit classes while you're training their staff. It was a far cry from their lives a year ago, when a trip to the next county had seemed like a luxury. The doorbell rang, and Linda burst in, waving more papers. "The community exchange program is approved," she announced. "Cedar Grove will host international student engineers, and our local kids get to study abroad." Victoria's already talking about scholarships. Jack smiled, remembering his own words to Victoria months ago. "A mechanic who understands both machines and people." Now that philosophy was spreading globally, changing not just how medical devices were made, but how knowledge was shared. His phone lit up with a message from Victoria. "Paris facility confirmed. They're particularly interested in your training methods. Bring the family. Their robotics lab would be perfect for Tommy's next project." "Dad?" Tommy looked up from his origami. "Do you think Mom ever got to see these places?" "Some of them," Jack said softly. "She presented her early research in London, and she always wanted to see the cherry blossoms in Japan." Emily touched the Tokyo ticket. "Then we'll see them for her. Take pictures, show her how her work has spread around the world." The Marshall-Morrison process had become more than just a manufacturing technique. It was a bridge between cultures, connecting people through the universal languages of science and compassion. Jack's practical approach to complex problems resonated across borders, while Sarah's emphasis on safety and precision saved lives in every country they visited. Linda was arranging the travel documents into neat piles when another message came through, this one from Amy in Lab 3. "You need to see this. The pediatric valve modifications are showing unprecedented success rates." Jack gathered his family, and they headed to the facility. These impromptu evening visits had become routine, part of their new normal. The security guard greeted Tommy by name, asking about his latest robot design. Emily automatically headed for the research wing, where she had her own workstation now. In Lab 3, Amy pulled up the test results. The modifications they'd made to Sarah's original process had allowed for micro-adjustments previously thought impossible. On the screen, a tiny heart valve moved with perfect precision, promising new hope for the youngest patients. "We're calling it the Sarah system," Amy said, "for the micro-calibration protocol." Jack felt Emily's hand slip into his. They watched the valve work, each beat a testament to how far they'd come from that rainy night when everything changed. "There's more," Amy continued. "Medical centers around the world are requesting our training program. They don't just want the technology, they want our whole approach, the way we blend practical experience with advanced theory." Tommy, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. "Dad, could we maybe stay a few extra days in each place? To meet the local kids, see how they do things?" "Already planned for," Victoria said from the doorway. She joined them at the display, her presence no longer carrying the weight of corporate authority, but the warmth of family. Cultural exchange is just as important as technical knowledge. Later that night, back home, Jack found Emily in Sarah's old study, now converted into a shared workspace. She was mapping out their upcoming travels on a large wall atlas, marking each city with 2 pins, one for the facility they'd help, and one for the local site Sarah had always wanted to see. Mom's diary helped, she explained, showing him the worn book she'd found in the study's renovation. She wrote about all the places she dreamed of visiting. Look, she even made notes about local mechanics and engineering traditions. Jack read Sarah's familiar handwriting. Every culture has its own way of fixing things, of making broken parts whole again. The trick is to learn from them all. Tomorrow they would start preparing for their first international presentations. There would be passports to arrange, curricula to adapt, cultural customs to learn. But tonight, watching his daughter plot their journey across the globe, Jack realized they weren't just expanding their horizons. They were fulfilling Sarah's dreams in ways she could never have imagined. Tommy appeared with his latest origami. "Creation, a delicate paper airplane. For Mom," he said, placing it on the atlas, "so she can fly with us." The Cedar Grove Gazette sat framed on Jack's office wall, its headline now a year old. "Local Hero Saves, CEO in Flood." Beside it hung the newest edition, "Marshall Morrison Process Saves Millionth Life." Both articles featured Jack's photo, but the man in the second looked different, more confident, more purposeful, like someone who had found his true calling. "Ready for the anniversary ceremony?" Victoria asked from his doorway. The facility was hosting a celebration, marking 1 year since the flood that had transformed their community. Almost. Jack straightened his tie, the one Sarah had given him years ago, saved from the floodwaters. Just waiting for the kids. The facility had changed too. Where empty halls once echoed, now researchers and mechanics worked side by side. The Marshall factory's old bones had been reimagined into a place of innovation and hope. Through the windows, Jack could see the town thriving, new businesses, new families, new energy. Emily arrived first, her intern badge now adorned with additional credentials. She'd just returned from presenting her research at an international medical conference in Tokyo. The surgeons there are already requesting modifications to the process. "For specialized cardiac applications," she reported. "They say our practical approach is revolutionizing their training programs." Tommy burst in next, clutching his latest robotics project, a miniature version of their manufacturing line that had won first place in the global youth engineering competition. "Mr. Watkins says we can install it in the children's wing at the hospital, so kids can see how their new heart valves are made." Linda appeared last, organizing folders for the ceremony. She'd become the heart of their community outreach, turning technical innovations into human stories. "The original rescue video is ready for the presentation," she said, "though I still can't believe how young you all look in it." They gathered in the lobby, where Sarah's portrait watched over a space now filled with success stories. Photos of patients whose lives had been saved, letters from doctors around the world, awards for medical innovation. But pride of place went to a simple framed document, Sarah's original research notes, her elegant diagrams showing how mechanical precision could improve medical care. The ceremony itself was being held in the garden they'd built behind the facility, a space designed for healing and reflection. Patients who had received their valve implants mingled with engineers who had helped create them. Medical students learned from veteran mechanics. Children from the robotics club demonstrated their projects to visiting surgeons. As Jack took the podium, he saw faces that bridged his past and present. Pete from the garage, now head of their practical training program. Amy, leading a new generation of technical supervisors. James Wu, who had become like family. And at the center of it all, his children, no longer struggling to cope with loss, but thriving in a world of possibility. A year ago, he began, a flood changed Cedar Grove forever. But what looked like destruction turned out to be transformation. What seemed like an ending became a beginning. He gestured to the facility behind him. The Marshall Morrison process isn't just about manufacturing medical devices. It's about understanding that the most important repairs aren't always visible. Sometimes they happen in our hearts, in our communities, in the way we see our own potential. Tommy beamed from his front row seat, while Emily wiped away tears that matched Linda's. Victoria stood at the back, nodding in quiet satisfaction at how her leap of faith in a small-town mechanic had paid off beyond anyone's expectations. Sarah Morrison saw this potential years ago, Jack continued. She understood that combining practical wisdom with innovative thinking could change lives. Today, her vision has helped save 1 million hearts around the world. And in the process, it helped heal ours. After the ceremony, as the sun set over Cedar Grove, Jack found himself back in his office. The new Gazette article caught his eye again, but this time he noticed something in the background of the photo. Sarah's portrait, watching over it all. His phone buzzed with messages. Tommy, Dad, the hospital approved my robot display. Emily, Stockholm conference confirmed for next month. Linda, dinner at the house tonight? Victoria's bringing that chef again? Jack smiled, remembering a rain-soaked night when he'd plunged into floodwaters to save a stranger. He hadn't known then that he was also saving himself, his family, his community. He hadn't known that sometimes the biggest breakthroughs come disguised as disasters, that the best fixes require both heart and hands. The last light of day caught Sarah's wedding ring, which he still wore on a chain around his neck. But now it felt less like a weight and more like a compass, pointing toward a future she had helped create. One where broken things could be made whole again, where healing came in many forms, and where love, like the best engineering, found a way to build something stronger from what was broken.